Gold never really leaves. Silver does. That is the whole story. And once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it for the rest of your life. So let me answer the question in the title right now, plainly, because you clicked to find out, and I am not going to make you sit through 15 minutes to hear it. Silver really is vanishing. Not in some vague, hand waving, the world is ending sense, in a literal, physical, ounce by ounce sense. Every single year, a great river of the stuff gets consumed by the modern world, and then it is simply gone, scattered so thinly across so many small objects that no one alive will ever bother to gather it back up. Gold is a hoard. Silver is a fuel. And the gap between those two little words is the most important thing almost nobody in the financial world is bothering to explain to you. Here is the concrete piece of it, the part that stops people cold when they first hear it. Think about a solar panel on a roof, or the phone in your pocket, or the electronics inside your car. Each one carries a tiny trace of silver. Not a coin's worth, a whisper of it, a smear measured in a few grams, spread through the guts of the device, because silver conducts electricity better than anything else on Earth, and industry cannot easily replace it. One panel, one phone, one circuit board is almost nothing. But multiply that whisper by the hundreds of millions of devices the world builds every year, and you are burning through an ocean of silver, one droplet at a time. And here's the cruel part. When that device dies and goes to a landfill, the silver goes with it. It is too dispersed, too diluted, too expensive to chase down and pull back out. It is spent. It is scattered. It is, for all practical purposes, gone forever. I want you to meet somebody because I think he makes this real in a way a chart never will. Picture a man who spent the better part of his working life running a small metals reclaiming shop, the kind of business that takes in old wire, old boards, old scrap, and pulls the valuable metal back out. Call him the reclaimer. He can tell you exactly which metals are worth chasing and which are not, because his whole livelihood depended on knowing the difference. Ask him about gold, and his eyes light up, because gold in old jewelry and old contacts is dense and concentrated and always worth recovering. Ask him about the silver buried 3 grams at a time inside a broken solar cell, and he just shakes his head. The cost to extract it is more than the silver is worth, so it stays in the ground, at the dump. In my years around the gold and silver world, I have watched people slowly realize what men like the reclaimer have known for decades. Gold gets saved, and silver gets used up. Now, hold those two behaviors side by side, because this is the spine of everything. Almost every ounce of gold ever mined in human history is still here. It sits in vaults, in central bank reserves, in coins in drawers, in wedding rings passed down 3 generations. Gold is hoarded by its very nature. Nobody destroys it. Silver is the opposite animal. Yes, some of it is hoarded, in coins and bars held by people who understand what they own, but an enormous and growing share of it gets eaten by industry, wired into things, and then dispersed beyond any hope of recovery. One metal accumulates through the centuries. The other one is quietly being consumed off the face of the earth. And when you truly grasp that, the phrase silver is vanishing stops sounding like a headline and starts sounding like a plain description of a fact. And this is where it gets stranger, because you would think the world could just dig up more. It cannot, not quickly, and the reason is a detail that most people never learn. Silver is mostly not mined on purpose. The majority of it comes out of the ground as a byproduct, a leftover, from mining copper and zinc and lead, which means the amount of new silver the world produces has almost nothing to do with how badly the world wants silver. It is chained to the demand for other metals entirely. So even if the silver price were to run and every silver miner on Earth wanted to dig faster, they mostly cannot, because they do not control the mines that actually produce the metal. Supply cannot answer the call. That is not a temporary problem. That is the structure of the thing. Put those two facts together, the consuming and the constrained supply, and you get the quiet crisis nobody wants to name. The world has now run a structural silver deficit for years, going on 6 straight years of it, where more silver is used up than is dug up. The difference gets covered by drawing down the above-ground piles that already existed, the bars sitting in vaults, the inventory built up over decades. Picture slowly emptying a reservoir that took a lifetime to fill, a little more every year, while the rain barely trickles in. Nobody panics because there is still water in the reservoir, until one day there is not, and then everyone is thirsty at once. We are drawing the reservoir down, and almost nobody is watching the level drop. And the demand side of this is not shrinking, it is accelerating, which is the part that makes the whole picture tighten instead of ease. The biggest and fastest growing use of industrial silver is solar power, and the world is building solar at a pace it has never built it before. Every one of those panels wants its little smear of silver, and there are more of them going up every year than the year before. On top of that, the whole electrified, wired up, data hungry world we are building, the chargers, the sensors, the server farms, the vehicles, all of it leans on the same metal for the same reason. Nothing conducts quite like silver. So the demand is not a fad that fades, it is baked into the direction the entire economy is moving. More electrification means more silver consumed, and more silver consumed means more of it dispersed, 3 grams at a time, into objects that will never give it back. The reclaimer would tell you the same thing in plainer words. The more the world modernizes, the more silver it quietly eats. So why is nobody watching? This is where I have to be honest with you about who benefits from your not knowing this. The big trading desks, the bullion banks, the financial media that never seems to have time for silver, they are not in the business of teaching you about slow, structural, 10-year truths. There is no money in it for them. They make their living on the churn, on the daily wiggle, on getting you to react to the noise instead of the signal. A frightened retiree who dumps his silver on a scary down day is a paying customer for the desk on the other side of that trade. The story of a metal being permanently consumed year after year is not a story you can trade in and out of for a quick fee, so it goes untold. The silence about it is not an accident. The silence is the business model. Now, let me be the honest guide here, because you should never trust anyone who only tells you one side. Silver is not a magic escape hatch, and I am not going to pretend I know where its price will be next month or next year, because I do not, and anyone who swears they do is selling you something. Silver is volatile, more volatile than gold, and it can be knocked around brutally in the short term by the paper markets, by margin changes, by fear, by a strong dollar. Twice in the last few decades, it ran up to a ceiling near the same neighborhood, more than 30 years apart, and both times it fell hard and made people who bought the very top wait a long, long time. So this is a case, not a promise, and it is not personal financial advice. What I am showing you is a structural setup, an honest read of supply and demand and human behavior. What you do with it has to fit your own life. Now, with that said, let me show you what to actually do about it. Because here is the thing. Understanding that silver is being consumed is interesting, but the reason it matters to you, sitting there with a lifetime of savings you are trying to protect, is what it says about the whole game the smart money is already playing. And the loudest signal of all is the central banks. For 3 years running now, the world's central banks have been buying gold at a record pace, roughly double what they were buying a decade ago, more than 1,000 tons a year, quietly moving out of paper promises and into metal they can hold in their own vaults. These are the most informed, most conservative buyers on the planet, and they are voting with real money. So here is what you can actually do about it at your own kitchen table. I put together something called the Retirement Wealth Protection Guide. It is free. It is the free guide for American retirees with $100,000 or more in a retirement account, and it walks through how everyday people move a portion of their savings into physical gold and silver inside the retirement account they already have, without taxes and without penalties. This is not just for insiders or the wealthy. If you have $100,000 or more in any retirement account, an old 401k, an IRA, this is for you. If you're watching this on your television, just scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to readfamilyguide.com. From our family to yours, no obligation and nothing to buy. Now let me take you deeper into the plumbing, because the Vanishing Act shows up in the actual inventories. And this is the part that ought to make you sit up. On the COMEX, the big American exchange where silver trades, there is a category of metal that is actually available for delivery, the real stuff that can be handed over to someone who demands it. That pile has been drawn down hard, pulled toward multi-year lows as buyers keep standing for delivery and hauling the metal away. The same drawdown story has been playing out in the Great London vaults for years. The physical metal is getting harder to find and pull out into the open, right at the same time that industry keeps eating it and the deficit keeps running. That is not a coincidence. That is the reservoir level dropping in real time, on the books, for anyone willing to read them. And here is where it gets strange in a way that should genuinely trouble you. For every ounce of real silver sitting in those vaults, there are far more paper claims on silver floating around, contracts and promises and IOUs, many multiples of paper for every deliverable ounce. As long as almost nobody asks for the physical metal, the game runs smoothly and the price stays orderly. It is a bit like a coat check room that has quietly sold more tickets than it has coats, betting that most people will never come to collect. It works beautifully, right up until a crowd shows up at the counter at the same moment, holding their tickets, wanting their coats. A few years back, an online army tried to force exactly that kind of reckoning, tried to buy so much physical silver that the paper game would break. It fizzled because paper can always print more paper faster than metal can be mined. But the vulnerability they were poking at is real, and it never went away. Then there is the East, and this is a piece the financial channels almost never mention to you. China has turned into a huge net importer of physical silver, pulling the metal in so aggressively that at times its domestic price in Shanghai has traded at a persistent premium to the price in London and New York. Think about what a premium like that means. It means someone over there is willing to pay more for the real metal than the Western paper price says it is worth, because they want the physical thing in hand, not a promise on a screen. Metal flows toward the highest bidder, so it drains from west to east, quietly, container by container. The reclaimer at his scrap yard understood the same truth in miniature. The real, physical stuff is the only thing that ultimately matters, and it is moving toward the people who grasp that. Now step back with me, because I want you to feel the contrast that sits at the heart of this whole thing. Look at what has happened to gold. Central banks have piled into it so heavily that, by recent reckoning, gold has climbed to become the second largest reserve asset they collectively hold, ahead of every currency except the dollar itself. Part of what lit that fire was watching one major power have its currency reserves frozen a few years ago in a geopolitical fight. Every finance minister on earth quietly noticed that a reserve held as someone else's paper can be switched off with a keystroke, but a bar of gold sitting in your own vault cannot be frozen, cannot be canceled, answers to no politics. So they hoard gold, harder than ever. And that is exactly the behavior silver does not get to enjoy at scale, because silver keeps getting consumed. One is being locked away by the most powerful institutions in the world. The other is being burned by the factory floor. Same instinct to hold hard money, wildly different fate for the metal. Let me mean the fear directly, because I know some of you are feeling it. You have spent 30 or 40 years building up what is in that retirement account. You did everything right. You saved when it was hard. You did not chase the crazy stuff. And now you are staring at a financial world that feels rigged and fragile, and your stomach tightens every time you think about a shock you cannot control. I understand that feeling completely. And the answer to it is not to gamble, and it is not to panic. The answer is to understand what durable, physical, hard-to-destroy wealth has done across every century of history, and to make sure a piece of what you own is exactly that kind of wealth, the kind no printing press can dilute and no keystroke can freeze. And here is the recognition I want to leave you with before we finish. The people who move first in these things are never the ones you see on television. The central banks are already positioned. The men who run the scrapyards and the industrial buyers already know how tight the physical metal is. The informed money is quietly acting on a structural shortage that the pension funds and the mainstream advisors have simply not woken up to yet. And by the time this Vanishing Act becomes so obvious that it is leading the evening news and every advisor on every channel is suddenly recommending silver, the cheap, quiet, early part of the story will already be behind us. That is just how these turns work. The advantage does not go to the person who reacts once it is loud. It goes to the person who understood while it was still quiet. Right now, on this subject, it is still remarkably quiet. So what should you actually do with your own position? Not a prescription, just principles from someone who has watched this play out more than once. Own the real thing, the physical metal, not just a paper claim that assumes the coat check room has enough coats. Size it so that a scary, volatile week can never force you to sell at the worst possible moment, because being forced to sell into a shakeout is how good people lose real money. And never, ever hand your metal to the trading desk on a fearful day just because the screen turned red. The consuming of silver does not stop because the price dipped. The structure does not care about a bad week. Think in years, the way the reclaimer did, the way the central banks do. Which brings me back to where we started, and to the most important thing I can offer you today. That same free retirement wealth protection guide is how you take the first step. And it is about more than just you. It is about the legacy, the portion of what you built that your children and your grandchildren will one day inherit, and making sure a piece of it is held in something durable and real, rather than something that can be quietly inflated away or switched off. For those of you with $100,000 or more who watch all the way to the end of this video and mention that you did, we also offer a free one-on-one educational web conference, a real conversation about your own situation. No pressure and nothing to buy. And let me give you the honest reason to act now, with no fake countdown attached. The moment when a decision like this is still calm, still cheap, and still fully reversible is precisely the moment when nothing feels urgent at all. That moment is right now, while silver is still vanishing quietly and nobody is watching. If you are on your television, scan the QR code on your screen. If you are on your phone or your computer, go to readfamilyguide.com. From our family to yours, gold never really leaves. Silver does. The reclaimer at his scrapyard understood it in his bones. The central banks understand it in their vaults. And now, you understand it too. The only question left is whether you act on it while it is still quiet or wait until the whole world is finally watching and the easy part is already gone.